Hello and welcome to Bangladesh Today. India's ruling coalition has reiterated that it will work towards building a consensus with the opposition parties on the crucial land border agreement with Bangladesh. However, with the parliament logjam and the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party having strong reservations on this agreement, it could mean that the LBA may not even get presented in parliament, let aside an amendment brought forth. To discuss this and more, we have with us senior journalist Neelova Roy Chaudhary, editor-in-chief at the Symbiosis India Review of Global Affairs, who has reported extensively on India-Bangladesh relations. Thank you for joining us, Neelova. I'd like to begin by asking you about this land border agreement and where are we right now on this? It's not even been introduced in Parliament, let aside getting a consensus with the opposition parties and it getting passed. Why is there a problem, even introducing this in Parliament?
Well, the problem appears to be with the main opposition parties in the country. The BJP, the principal opposition, is in alliance with a party called the AGP in Assam, the Ahom Gana Parishad. Now, this particular party has a problem with the exchange of enclaves because they feel that that would facilitate the entry of illegals into India via Assam. Now, most of these problems are somewhat superficial. They don't really impact the enormous benefits that would accrue from this particular agreement. But the problem appears to be that election year is approaching in India as well as in Bangladesh. So nobody wants to ruffle any regional parties' feathers, particularly in the hope of having some species of post-poll alliances perhaps. So the government, while its intent is really good and it has been pushing for a great deal of normalization and improvement of ties with Bangladesh, this is not really a fast-track item for the government. This is not the nuclear deal moment, as it were, for the Prime Minister at this point. So they're not pushing it through.
Tell me, how many enclaves are there actually which are going to be transferred between India and Bangladesh? I mean, there are over 100 enclaves which Bangladesh is going to get, and I think about a 51 or something that India gets. Is that really going to impact so much as far as the demographics of the area is concerned, especially Assam, if that's where the problem area is?
See, I don't think so at all, because the problematic enclaves are on that Cooch Behar border area of West Bengal. It's not even actually within the Assam perimeter, but the population we're talking about is fairly insignificant. It's maybe a total of about 51,000 people according to the last survey that was done jointly. So you're not going to have a great demographic shift that's happening. All it would essentially do is allow this little unfinished business of partition to finally get sorted out and resolved with this little demarcation of the national territories of both countries. Now you have a situation where there are about 17,000 hectares of Indian territory comprising these 111 enclaves within the territory that now comprises Bangladesh. Similarly, about 51 odd territories of Bangladeshi enclaves within Indian soil, as it were. And this is because rivers changed course and all kinds of things happened, and the origin of this was actually a gambling debt between the erstwhile Maharaja of Cooch Behar and the Rangpur Maharaja. So it's a bit of a mess. All this particular land boundary agreement would do is formalize what already exists.
So there's no contesting that anybody is doing. I mean, neither Bangladesh nor India is contesting that area right now.
Not
about the enclaves. That's all been decided.
That's all been decided. In fact, as recently as February this year, when our foreign minister went across to Bangladesh, they actually exchanged the strip maps, which were essentially almost down to one house at a time, were exchanged by both countries to say that this is what exists at this point and this is how we will formalize it. So what this would entail is that India perhaps would formally give up its claim to about 10,000 hectares of land, because that's the 111 enclaves comprise approximately 17,000 hectares the 51 Bangladeshi enclaves in India comprise approximately 7,000 odd hectares. So, for a sum of 10,000 hectares in a country as large as India's, you have people who are so petty that they cannot conceive of just formalizing an agreement to improve the lives of those who actually exist there, because these 51.
How will it improve the quality of life? I mean, see, if you actually think about it, you don't want to give up even 1 hectare of land which is legally yours. No country wants to do that, right? I mean, we've had problems with China, we've had problems with Pakistan regarding inch by inch space. So I can understand that point of view, but if it has already been agreed between the two countries and we're not, we technically don't even sit there, we don't even own that right now, so how does it matter? That I can appreciate, but how is it going to improve the quality of life of those who are living out there? Could you explain that to me?
See, these people are essentially in enemy territory, as it were, or in hostile territory. So, you have Indians who are living within the territory of Bangladesh and vice versa. So, they are not entitled to any of, or they cannot get access to any of the regular citizenship benefits that should accrue.
So, they can't buy land, they can't join government service.
They don't have the most basic civic services. Forget about buying land and so on. They are in a state where they do not have access to markets, where they do not have schools, there are no civic services. It's a mess.
Because the legality of their position is not guaranteed by either country.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. And they are just left there to their fate essentially, because nobody wants to take an interest and get something done for them till this right. issue is resolved.
Now, India has in principle given a guarantee of sorts to Bangladesh that it agrees on this LBA. It will bring forth an amendment in Parliament, but it's waiting for the opposition to agree to that, right? Now, even if they do bring it in Parliament, it's unlikely that it will pass, because the opposition says that they are not going to go ahead and it needs 2/3 majority for this, right? Now, explain this to me, how it will come about.
No, the consensus that is being talked about, the fact that this particular agreement would, enormous benefits would accrue in terms of India's national security primarily. And the principal opposition party at this point, the BJP's major plank is national security.
Can you explain how national security would benefit, how we would benefit, India would benefit in terms of national security? Is it because the Bangladesh government led by Sheikh Hasina is cooperating extensively with India with regard to national security of both countries? So,
see,
if you could elaborate on that.
There are 2 or 3 things here. This is not a new issue. This is something that's been festering since before partition. Now, once this issue gets resolved, it's a small area technically that comprises maybe about 6.1 odd kilometers of this over 4,000 kilometer border between the two countries. What this does is formalize the border and settle the question forever. So, then you have a formalized border which you can then proceed to fence or do whatever it is that you wish. Consequently, the possibility of any illegal immigration happening from there, which is again another major plank for the BJP, that reduces enormously. Okay. Secondly, the fact that you have made a commitment to a neighbor, the government of India, I mean, ultimately this treaty was actually not signed just now. It was signed in 1974. And what was done 2 years ago when our Prime Minister visited Bangladesh was that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina there added this additional protocol whereby they actually identified all of the, they went into the nitty-gritty of the details so that there was no scope for any further confusion within the whole process. Having done that, we have made a commitment to another country, a sovereign country. 2 sovereign countries have made a commitment to each other, which at the end of the day we are not respecting, because the Bangladesh Parliament has ratified this agreement and it is legal and law there.
Explain to me, Nilova, how is it that the Indian government can make a commitment to a neighbor when it knows that for this it requires a constitutional amendment. You know, if it was anything else like the Teesta, you go ahead with it. But when you know that you need a constitutional amendment, how can you make this commitment? What if tomorrow Manmohan Singh tells Nawaz Sharif that, okay, POK is yours? Even though he can't technically do it because he needs to go back to parliament for that. Or if you tell China tomorrow that Aksai Chin is yours, how can you make that kind of a commitment? How can a government make a commitment when it knows that it needs a parliament ratification, it needs a constitutional amendment?
Well, the original commitment was not made today. It was made in 1974 between two leaders of sovereign nations, one that had just emerged and the other the leader who had more than adequate representation in parliament to be able to carry it through as a national commitment. Now, what Prime Minister Manmohan Singh did in 2011 was just simply to delineate and get into the details of what actually was supposed to be done. Now, having done that, I think it is well within a country's Prime Minister's sovereign right to basically stamp an agreement that was done about 40 years ago and finish and resolve the issue finally to the benefit of all. Now, there is no comparison between what what might happen between Nawaz Sharif and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and this particular issue, for the simple reason that this is a leftover baggage from partition which does not have any major detrimental effects on either India or Bangladesh. On the contrary, it resolves and improves the lives of a lot of people, and it improves India's security environment hugely, because at the end of the day, the longest border India shares is not with any other country, it is with Bangladesh. Now, if you resolve this major issue, you have one enormous headache less, you have a lot less infiltration, you've given 10,000 hectares at the end of the day might appear a lot of land, but actually it isn't, because this isn't in our possession
anyway. All right. If you read Bangladeshi media, you come to know that it matters a lot to Sheikh Hasina to be able to deliver on Teesta and on LBA before the elections, because that is what she's promised her people, that this will happen. Why is the LBA so important? Teesta we have discussed in other shows. Why is the LBA so important for her? And do you think hopes are fading and it might even impact on her visit to India?
I am almost certain it would impact on her visit to India. I do not anticipate a visit by her if the LBA does not go through.
Oh, really? Because she would be going back with nothing then?
Absolutely, absolutely so. But more, the reason the LBA is a symbol of what is important is because it hinges on India's ability to deliver. You see, there's a perception in Bangladesh that India says a lot, it talks a lot, but it does not at the end of the day deliver.
Join the club, we in India think so too.
Well, there it is. But the fact remains that until and unless you get some species of firm commitment, I mean, to be fair to her, Sheikh Hasina has gone out on a limb and seems to be bandied about within her country as somebody who's very pro-India. Now, there are a lot of elements within Bangladesh who do not like India. I mean, that's putting it mildly. These are people who, in all likelihood, would succeed her, because the kinds of things that she has been trying to do for the past 4 or 5 years, the whole issue of resolving the legality of the creation of Bangladesh itself, putting to trial people who were against that idea. On the 1st of this month, there was even a ban on the registration of the Jamaat. Now, these are enormously significant events that are, happening simultaneously. For this lady to be able to go to her electorate and say, see, I went out on a limb, I cooperated with India, and see, this is what it has got me. Now, if she cannot do that, she needs her hands strengthened from every aspect, because if we have a party like the BNP or the Jamaat in tandem coming back to power, as appears fairly likely at this point, our security situation is going to be a nightmare. What with 2014 unfolding in Afghanistan, Pakistan nearing implosion any other day. What are we going to be doing if we have a government that is detrimental in Bangladesh as well? This would have been the one good news story that we could have actually gone to polls with on both sides.
You know, a couple of years ago, or should I say, when the BJP was in power, at that time there was a thinking that we have put all our eggs in one basket. We've backed Hasina Wajid, and we should also be, looking at Begum Khalida Zia. We should be, our support to Bangladesh should be bipartisan. That backfired. It did not work. Do you think that that the BJP would have learnt its lessons and realized that cooperating with Sheikh Hasina, with the Awami League, is the way to go forward?
Well, I personally think that the government also has been a little lax in pursuing this particular issue. Had they taken it up in the budget session right after Salman Khurshid got back from Bangladesh, when they'd actually exchanged the strip maps and tried to garner a consensus, telling people that, look, this is our last chance to ensure that we have a friendly government in this massive neighbor of ours on the east. Our entire northeastern policy technically hinges on this issue. We want transit to our own northeast through Bangladesh. That is being stalled because these issues are not being cleared.
Is it already too late, do you think, on, the way the parliament is functioning the past week, we've seen logjam literally, and now this food security and the coal scam. Because of that, parliament is literally, everything is on a limb. Do you think it's already too late as far as the LBA is concerned?
I am a perennial optimist. I hope that this gets introduced in the next day or so, and I'm told Parliament might get extended a bit. And if people actually set their minds to it, and I know the principal opposition feels similarly. I know that they do not want to risk the idea of an Islamist kind of a party coming into Bangladesh. They would prefer a secular kind of a government that
upholds the secular nature of the constitution of Bangladesh, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for speaking with us, Niloba, and I hope that the LBA does get passed.